Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something really fascinating, the 2021 profile of older Americans. We are literally in the middle of a massive demographic shift right now, one that deeply affects our families, our economy, and, honestly, our everyday lives. It's a story of human resilience, shifting populations, and some pretty big structural challenges, and we're going to break it all down together. So, to kick things off, check out this massive number. 104,819. That is the record-breaking number of Americans who were aged 100 or older in the year 2020. I mean, just think about that for a second. That's more than triple the figure we saw back in 1980. People are living longer than ever before, and it's completely reshaping the landscape of our country. Section 1. A rapidly growing population, often called the silver tsunami. The sheer velocity of this growth is, well, it's pretty staggering. From 2010 to 2020, the number of Americans aged 65 and older jumped by an astounding 38%, hitting 55.7 million. But wait, until you see where we're headed. Projections show a leap to over 80 million older Americans by the year 2040. To put that into perspective, that is more than twice as many older folks as we had back in the year 2000.
So, what does this macro data actually mean for our everyday reality? And this brilliantly illustrates it. As of 2020, 17% of the total U.S. population was over 65. That's more than 1 in every 6 Americans. If you look around your community, your neighborhood, maybe your workplace, this demographic shift isn't just some future concept, it's already very much a part of your daily life.
Moving on to Section 2, the changing demographics and a more diverse generation.
This contrast we're seeing is truly a triumph in education. Think about this. Back in 1970, only 28% of older adults had completed high school. Fast forward to 2021, and that number has skyrocketed to 89%. Today's older adults are drastically more formally educated than their predecessors, with about a third now holding a bachelor's degree or even higher.
Now, there's a very common myth we need to bust right here. Many people just assume a huge portion of older adults live in nursing homes. But you know what? The data tells a completely different story. Only about 1.2 million older adults actually live in nursing homes. In reality, 60% of older adults live out in the community with a spouse or partner, and 27% live independently on their own. So the vast majority are living right there in our communities alongside us.
This generation is also rapidly diversifying. Back in 2020, nearly 1 in 4 older adults were from minority populations. And over the next 2 decades, these communities will absolutely drive the demographic growth of older Americans. The projected increases are mind-blowing. We're talking a 148% increase for older Hispanic adults, 93% for Asian Americans, 73% for African Americans, and 58% for Native Americans.
Okay, let's dive into this next section. Section 3, Work, Wealth, and Housing. The Economic Reality.
Check this out. 10.6 million Americans. That is the number of Americans aged 65 and older who were still active in the labor force in 2021. Whether they're working or actively seeking work, older Americans are staying in the workforce significantly longer than they did in decades past. For some, sure, it's a choice to stay engaged, but for others, it's a stark economic necessity.
The economic reality is pretty sharply divided, particularly when it comes to housing. For those 75 and older, homeowners have a median income of $36,200, while renters sit at just $18,280. And here's the really heavy burden. 45% of older householders are spending a third or more of their income entirely on housing. When you're on a fixed income, well, those housing costs create an immense amount of pressure.
While 5 million older adults live below the poverty line overall, that economic vulnerability is highly concentrated in specific demographics. I actually want to read this directly from the report. The highest poverty rates were experienced among older Hispanic women who lived alone, hitting a severe 35.6%. It's a vital reminder that the aging experience is definitely not economically uniform across the board.
Which brings us to Section 4, Health and Rising Costs. Living longer, but at a price.
We really have to look at what those extra years actually entail. Most older Americans are managing at least one and often multiple chronic physical conditions. Nearly half deal with arthritis, over a quarter have experienced some form of cancer, a fifth manage diagnosed diabetes, and 14% have coronary heart disease. It takes a lot of continuous medical management to maintain their quality of life.
So the crucial point is how this impacts their wallets. Back in 2020, almost all older Americans, about 94%, had Medicare. But despite having that insurance coverage, individuals are still absorbing massive personal expenses. Average out-of-pocket healthcare costs hit $6,668 in 2020 alone. That's driven largely by insurance premiums and medical services that just aren't fully covered by Medicare.
To put that financial pressure into perspective, those out-of-pocket health costs represent a staggering 38% increase just since the year 2010. Health costs are rising so much faster than fixed incomes, creating this growing squeeze for millions of older Americans.
And right alongside those medical costs are everyday physical challenges. About 18% of adults 65 and older report significant difficulty in daily functioning. Mobility is the most common issue, followed by hearing, cognition, and vision. This really lays the groundwork to understand exactly why so much outside help is required just to manage daily life.
Let's move on to our final theme. Section 5, the caregiving reality and the unpaid support system.
I want you to think about this question for a second. Who actually takes care of older Americans? When someone needs help with groceries, medications, mobility, or complex daily tasks, and they aren't in a nursing home, who steps up? Well, here is the punchy answer. 40.4 million family caregivers. This is an incredible, almost invisible backbone of spouses, children, and friends who provide unpaid care. On average, those caring for someone they live with are spending 3 hours every single day providing support. It's an enormous, unpaid ecosystem of love and responsibility.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because, caregiving actually flows in both directions. There are 1.1 million grandparents aged 60 and older who are responsible for the basic needs of their grandchildren. They aren't just babysitting, they are quite literally raising the next generation.
These numbers truly humanize the incredible resilience of these grandparents. In 44% of these cases, there is no parent present at all. Over 400,000 of these grandparents are still in the labor force trying to make ends meet. Nearly a third have a disability themselves, and 16% live below the poverty line. Despite these extreme challenges, they're stepping up to hold their families together.
Which leaves us here. By 2040, 22% of the entire U.S. population will be 65 or older. We're looking at a more educated, more diverse, and larger older population than ever before in human history. So the question we really have to ask ourselves is, how will our society, our healthcare infrastructure, and our own families adapt to this new reality? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it gave you a clear, structured view into the new face of aging in America. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.